Yeah, so welcome to the Ideology Magazine podcast. I am so thrilled to have you on the show. I found out about your candidacy online and just was impressed with your background and the fact that you want to run for mayor at this most challenging time.
Yes.
For mayor of New York City.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Why now?
You know, we're in this moment where, as I said, representation matters. You know, New York City is not working for everyone. You know, our students are being left behind, and students in marginalized communities are not getting the opportunities that I believe that they can get. So I just think it's time for smarter, more agile government. And, you know, with my background, my lived experiences, you know, I think that I am the ideal candidate for this moment.
Right. So you're a Brooklyn, born and bred in Brooklyn?
Yes, yes.
You still live in Brooklyn?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes. Moved around a little bit, lived in Virginia for a couple of years and then came back. But yeah, but you know, born and raised in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York.
So you're well equipped to know what the challenges that most New Yorkers face are. And you know, obviously, like it's a big city, so inequality is a huge problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. So what are your policies for tackling? Because, I mean, it's challenging to be mayor of any city, a big city like New York, but this makes it the most challenging time. I mean, I haven't lived long enough to know other periods in history when things were challenging, but this has got to be up there. It's like, you know, from what I read, the pandemic has ravaged in New York, right?
Yes, it has. And again, you know, we need agile leadership.
Right.
You know, just my background in terms of being a data scientist and an accountant, and then just being an agile thinker and a strategic thinker. This is what we need for this moment. You know, I'm a leader that won't make haphazard decisions. You know, all of my decisions will be based on the data. And, you know, my background in terms of being a researcher gives me the ability to sort of see things and make decisions that are best for everyone, but make them decisively and quickly. So, you know, we're able to move forward in a way that benefits everyone.
Right. And what do you think are the top challenges that you would address right now?
I mean,
100 days in your office, right? What are the key issues that you
economic inequality, you know, education. You know, immediately we need to sort of get into some of these schools and get the resources that they need. You know, I need access to a lot of data to sort of, you know, be intentional in terms of my planning. But, you know, we need to reduce crime. And, you know, in order to do that, again, we need to go into the communities and start investing in programs that are not just going to help, you know, the kids that don't have the resources that they need now, but the children that are coming up. You know, they need to be trained for a 21st century. And if we don't do that, you know, my issue is that, you know, our children will be left behind in 10 or 15, you know, 20 years from now. You know, our students that are in, you know, kindergarten, you know, through 12th grade won't have the opportunities that they need because we weren't preparing them now. So we're in a critical moment, and, you know, we don't have time for the past. You know, whatever is going on in the past has not worked. Mm-hmm. If we have a lot of the same issues with education that we had 200 years ago. Right. We have the same issues with crime that we've had for the last 40 years. We've known that certain zip codes in New York City have represented the prison system in disproportionately high numbers. So this is not new data, but the way we tackle these issues has to change.
You've mentioned the issue of crime. And then you see all these movements to defund the police. A lot of people in this country very much care and follow American politics. So can you explain to us some of the thinking behind some of these movements?
The defund movement is about reinvesting in the communities and sort of divesting away from, you know, a sort of military, you know, a sort of policing where, you know, the police are are funded in the way that society believes that it reduces crime.
Right.
So, that's my, sort of personal opinion of, the movement.
Mhm.
For me, having, grown up in one of the most notoriously violent neighborhoods in New York City, I see this from, two sides of the spectrum. As a researcher, as I said, I believe that, we need to be intentional with resources. We need, the police need to be able to address the trends that are occurring in crime. At the same time, we also need to address those drivers. And as an accountant, as someone that understands fiscal responsibility and having worked for the police department, I understand that there are resources that are put into certain activities that can be sort of reallocated
Right.
and utilized for other, sort of community-based programs that would reduce the need for, this sort of policing to begin with.
Right. So wouldn't you say then it's not really an issue of defunding, it's more actually investing in proper policing where police are trained to almost understand that their causes and root causes of crime. For example, if you're saying the education is not fit for purpose, if you're saying, there's increasing levels of inequality, all of these things, so that the police are trained to better handle these issues. Is that what you're saying?
We know that New York City is a global city. So as mayor, I look at, it would be my responsibility to protect, New York City residents from all harms. And it's not just, gun violence, it's the threat of terrorist attacks. There's so much that goes into our budget in terms of policing and public safety that are really not addressed with the defund movement. So for me, I am, about, reallocating resources, to the community in a way that reduces crime, but
Right.
not necessarily jeopardizes public safety.
Right. Employment is the best way to tackle inequality, right? Education, employment. And so I was listening to the argument around Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her rejection of Amazon, and heard you speak about, food deserts and recreational deserts. And do you think that there's a role for business to play in tackling some of the issues that this city is challenged with?
Absolutely. It's a role that they should play. Everyone should be invested in New York City. Our businesses, our, organizations, they should all be invested. Because if you look at what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, when New York City shut down, the world felt it. Our economy is interconnected. Every business should be invested in terms of, jobs, training programs. Again, investing in a 21st century economy means ensuring that every New York City resident and student has the skills that they need to be able to earn a living wage.
Right.
Now, our education system is just not producing that sort of student and individual with the consistency that we need at this moment.
What industries would you say have been most impacted by the pandemic in New York?
I mean, of course, the hospitality industry, our nightlife industry, our hotel industry. These are industries that rely on, public activities, visitors, and so when you shut all of these things down, restaurants, they are disproportionately affected. But then again, you think about the interconnectivity of our economy. And, if restaurants are not ordering food, then you have different parts of the country that are also now impacted. So, again, our activities that bring people together are the most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the background that equips you to really understand the kind of challenges that today's millennial, centennial, who is not fortunate enough to inherit some wealth, is facing.
Well, again, I call myself a legacy warrior for a reason. I was born into the struggle, and I've overcome tremendous adversity. And in doing so, I look back at every barrier that could have stopped me from attaining a goal. And I started to develop policies that would eliminate those barriers. I worked hard and I was fortunate enough to get through some of them, but I'm still facing some of those unique barriers. So, it's one of the reasons why I decided to run for mayor, because I feel as if I'm a representative of the people. The things that I'm experiencing are the things that a lot of New York City residents are experiencing. Poor policies in terms of our education system, K through 12, or whether it was, an environment in terms of the workplace and, just being qualified for positions and being turned down for them, or, being a woman that's entering the workplace and being paid less than everyone else, or, having to ride the New York City transit system and, on some days, have an amazing experience, and on other days, not so much. Being in the trenches and growing up in this, I had that sort of unique experience. And then the combination of the fact that, as I said, I've seen the very best of New York City and I've seen the very worst of New York City. And capturing those experiences as a researcher and to really research the impact of those experiences prepares me for this moment.
We're similarly going through the same thing where we've printed a lot of money, and at some point it's going to be really hard to find the funding for better public services. How would you go about it?
So a large portion of my platform is to transform New York City into a smart city. And use technology in a way that reduces our expenses. Go into each city agency, and as an accountant, someone that understands budgets, look at each agency and determine where there's wasteful spending, where we're utilizing resources that we don't need to. A lot of systems that we have, we spend so much money maintaining legacy systems. And again, this is where the private sector comes in. This is where the technology industry comes in. It's like, New York City can be a partner with the tech industry that revolutionizes everything and brings all of our systems online in a way that, again, truly benefits everyone, but at the same time start to reduce these costs, these common costs that are associated with, again, dated systems and dated processes. Right. Looking at, New York City government from a Six Sigma standpoint, really like going in and looking at the operational apparatus of city government as a whole and the connectivity of every single agency. The agencies need to start working together in a way that sort of synergistically makes sense from an economic standpoint and as well as sharing of resources.
From what I understand, there's been a lot of mismanagement, right, of New York's budget, and right now they're kind of being propped up by the federal government. So that would indicate that you need a lot of private investment, right? But at the same time, again, just based on what I've managed to glean, businesses are not finding New York as attractive due to high taxes. What would you do to make New York more attractive to businesses and private investment?
Again, everything that that we just talked about in terms of improving the, New York City government's overall operational apparatuses. It's not about, wasteful spending. It is more about our systems being very archaic. And that's costly when everything is moving in one direction and you're sort of stagnant, you have to pay to sort of keep certain systems and processes in line. When technology is moving at a pace where the city government is not sort of moving at that pace or even half of that pace, you sort of have these redundancies that cost more to maintain, instead of, again, eliminating costly processes that you don't need it to begin with.
Have you identified industries like that or places where you feel, you could easily update?
Yes, within city government, absolutely. There
Right.
are a lot of them. Yeah, so we have, like, for our homeless population, we have about 19 city agencies that service the homeless population. So it's sort of different things like this. Again, if we're sharing resources, then and again, in looking at the overall operational apparatuses, this is the way to reduce cost, right? If we have a high efficiency task, we figure out a way to do it the most cost effective way. It's not about whether it's, again, a homeless family from the time period that they enter, emergency housing to the time that they exit. If we look at ways to sort of reduce those costs associated, so now we are running a government that is with the purpose of ensuring that we have the funds that we need to fund the programs that we need to fund. And again, it's all about prioritizing the areas that are costing our city government the most. And, wasteful spending contributes to a lot of our city budget.
In all big cities, small businesses have taken a huge hit, right? How would you help small businesses?
So again, we have to look at the data because, even in New York City, how you help one small business is not going to be the same approach. So, again, I'm going to use data to inform my decision making. And that's sort of the short answer of that. But, we're going to lead with the data, so we can be intentional about our spending and how we help small businesses recover.
Are there areas that you feel that your current mayor, Bill de Blasio, has failed, and you would wish to do things differently?
Well, again, I feel as if, they're not utilizing data in a way that produces sound decision making. So you have haphazard decisions that occur. I like to think of, this administration as sort of, the individuals that sort of leadership that looks and knows that there's a hole in the roof, but we don't have to worry about it because it's sunny outside. But when it rains, they look to put a bucket where the hole in the roof is. And so if it's a slow leak, yeah, maybe to maintain that leak. But I'm the sort of leadership that I know there's a hole in the roof and I look to fix it. So if there's a storm, we don't have to worry about sort of whether or not the bucket will be enough to avoid a leak or damage as a result of a storm that we could have prepared for. So, again, the information infrastructure, information seeking channels, I feel as if, again, it's all based about, data-driven public policies. And I just did not see in a way that could have saved lives because we lost 24,000, New Yorkers to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I really strongly feel as if, that did not need to be the case. We had acted sooner and understood, the unique population that we have in New York City.
Right. I mean, I am more aware, I think, of the governor, and obviously, I'm aware of the criticism of how he fails to protect senior citizens and his mishandling of the pandemic. It feels to me like, we all have this rhetoric around how cities are going to build back better, but most of us don't know how that's going to happen because big businesses, have made a lot of money, but seem unwilling to pay taxes, or and then the small businesses have been so deeply affected that if they haven't been already put out of business, they feel like they're on their last legs. I don't know about you, but so for us here in London, a lot of offices and commercial real estate, all of that has suffered a huge impact. And so I'm failing to see how we do build back better.
Yes. Looking at the data, we have to be intentional in terms of our research.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened in the past, as people have thought of these great plans that sound great, but the how is left out.
Yes.
So once they get elected, they typically don't do what they said they're going to do, because they never actually had a plan in place to execute, right? And again, my administration is going to be tasked with looking at the data, and because I'm a data scientist, because I'm a researcher, there's, I'm the one looking at the analysis and sort of determining the best way to bring each individual sector back to, pre-pandemic levels. And if we need to pivot and sort of do something differently, because again, sometimes everything is not going to go back to the way it was, right? If you look at Eastern Kodak, 20 years ago, everyone was walking around with the camera, so, 20 years ago, everyone had CDs, so it's about adjusting to the times. And the leadership that we have right now just doesn't understand how technology is disrupting every industry. It's disrupting everything to a point where our old way of life just won't be efficient in order for everyone to take advantage of a new age economy.
So talking of us being in this new age moment and accepting that, possibly nothing is going to go back to exactly how it was pre-pandemic. I mean, again, comparing it to here in London, people are really struggling to cope in terms of just mentally adjusting to what this change means. We've had several lockdowns, businesses can't really plan. A lot of people have moved out of the city, and the city seems to have lost its vitality. People don't want to live in a city if it doesn't offer all of those benefits, if it doesn't offer the hospitality and the theater district and all of those things that really make living in a 2-bedroom apartment worth
it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's a trying time, and that's why the right leadership, it is so important to elect leaders for this moment.
Right.
For this moment, candidates of the future, people that understand the uniqueness of this moment. And if they are talking about things that have occurred in the past, they don't understand the uniqueness of this moment.
Right. Do you feel there are some big businesses in New York who really understand the opportunity that the moment presents?
Yeah.
So I want us to be more hopeful now.
Yes, absolutely. That's why they're still here. Their profit margins are amazing. Again, if you look at the financial industry, if you look at the technology industry, we have, billionaires that are, we're going to go to space, so, this is sort of their life, which is sort of different from the everyday average New Yorker and American. So, but again, they understand this moment, right? They're utilizing technology and looking at ways to just explore, and not just explore what's on earth, but outside of that. Right. So again, and if we're talking about bold, at this moment, we need bold leadership that is also willing to explore, that is also willing to take risks in a way that will benefit their entire constituency, not just a selected few, because it's irresponsible to continuously leave a group of people behind. And now this is what we're seeing in large cities around, in small towns all around the country. folks are being left behind. And the COVID-19 has exposed just how much folks are being left behind.
Right.
So again, we need leadership, bold leadership for this moment that understands that we need to explore and we cannot go back to where we were, because that's not going to work in this moment.
I read about the YOLO economy, that, there are a generation that is really the most ready to get into work and step into senior roles, which is the millennials. They're supposed to be, this is their time, right? Like, to take over. But they probably feel anxious about work now because, a lot of us have looked at work and it doesn't offer the stability, the security that previous generations associated with working for companies. So many people were furloughed, so many people, lost their jobs, and made, from what I understand, it's made them rethink, how much of their lives they want to spend working for companies that offer no security, different from if you were just kind of freelance or an independent worker.
Yeah, technology is disrupting every industry. And it is important to ensure that individuals have the skills that they need to take advantage of these advances in technology. And that means whether it's going to be them developing sort of their own niche and understanding that I have something that individuals want to buy, or whether it's identifying an organization that may sort of organization that they believe that will sort of match their skill set and their mission and their goals, in terms of whether it's their professional goals or personal goals. Because a lot of times an individual can sort of be interested in the organization's goal because it sort of coincides with how they feel personally. And professionally, it sort of makes sense. But the starting point for that is to ensure that people have the skills that they need. So we have to have a serious conversation about technology and how it's disrupting every industry. Again, we can't go back to what has been. And I give the example of the CD, the Walkman. You just look at the music industry, right? We don't need to purchase a CD in order to listen to a couple of tracks from our favorite artists, right? So you look at this distributor. So in order for everyone to take advantage, they have to first understand, how does these changes or advances in technology help me or hurt me based on where I am professionally, my skill set. I don't feel like that conversation is being had. It's just sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's just, again, it's progressing at a speed that our leaders, our elected officials, worldwide, are just not given the attention that they should give to these disruptors.
If we take it down to the micro level and you think of someone who, completed a degree in university, a master's, to become a Wall Street trader or work in the finance industry, has spent 2-3 decades already doing that. They're now in their 50s. And like you say, technology is disrupting that. Now everyone can trade on an app.
Yeah.
You're saying that these people, everyone will have to retrain.
Yes, they'll have to figure out, they have to be strategic thinkers and say, okay, is my new niche going to be advice? But they're going to have to pivot, because if they don't, advances in technology are going to leave them behind.
And you think that's possible or is it we're just going to have to bear the pain for a bit, like other people had to when their industries were disrupted? It is going to be a painful moment, right?
Some industries are disrupted, and then again, some industries are gone forever.
Right.
So we have to have these conversations about what industries are in danger of being gone forever. What happens to that workforce? You don't wait until it occurs. You plan accordingly, and you start connecting them to other to other sort of parts of the economy, whether it's going to be the gig economy, whether it's going to be the technology industry that is going to now support these individuals and sort of figuring out, what it is that they can do to now contribute to the new economy that, again, is going to leave some industries behind.
I think for a lot of people, especially the young, it's very easy to get, to feel dejected, because you feel like you're almost like in a no man's land, where you've just finished your degree and you are hopeful for a career or to embark on a career, then COVID has happened. Not only how we work has been interrupted and our ability to socialize, how, we become more anxious about how we socialize. And they're dealing with all of this at the same time. It feels as if there are some big businesses that are constantly disrupting and sucking in all of the labor. I look at a company like Amazon, but they've just opened, I don't know in New York, but here Amazon has opened salons. And I was walking past one and curiously went inside and saw from the inside the looks of people who are walking past, because you would literally see Amazon and you think, oh, is that an Amazon store? An actual physical store? Oh no, it says Amazon Salon. And so you're thinking, is this going to be the future where everything is going to be a few companies, and some of the big technology companies are going to dominate everything, and there's not going to be power for the individual or a small business?
That's exactly what can potentially happen, because again, you look at technology disrupting so many industries. So when it happens, it's going to take either an investment from an Amazon, right? Because your smaller your smaller. Let's give the example of the salons, right? That would probably be difficult to have, to a difficult business model in New York City, just because this is, it's fashion capital, and the salons are associated with a certain look, a certain, influence. So that at this juncture, Amazon can't tap into, because people have been, you've had stylists that have worked out of their homes, like it's just so, people don't necessarily feel the need to go into at this juncture, don't feel the need to go into a particular salon in order to, have their stylist work with them. They move around with their stylist. So, but again, when you start to reduce the number of commercial spaces,
Right.
and then now there's less individuals that can afford those spaces, and then you have rents that are astronomically high, then you start pushing stylists further and further outside of the city, and now you're sort of only left with a workforce of stylists that if you are just going to get, maybe a blowout or, a sort of wash and set, you can pretty much do that anywhere. So, I don't see that business model sort of being effective yet in New York City. But again, we have to have the conversation about how technology is disrupting industries, right? We have to understand it in the connectedness of when one industry goes, who else will it affect, right? Because where there is weakness, well, strength at the top can be jeopardized by weakness at the bottom. And without looking at the data, you're sort of making decisions to sort of hold and support one industry at the expense of two or three that are going to sort of, again, cease to exist maybe 5 or 10 years from now.
Right. I am curious about what your political ideology is. Are you, left, right, center? What party?
I'm a common sense candidate. I think now I don't, I'm a registered Democrat,
Mhm.
but, again, data guides my decision making,
Mhm.
not an ideological sort of aspect. Data that guides my decision. It's either a good decision or it's not.
Right,
And
right. So
which
it's not like you have a fixed set of beliefs that you think, you know what, no matter what the data says, this is my ideology. I am a Democrat. Like, for example, just looking at Los Angeles, and, I'm listening to conversations on both sides where, on the one hand, small businesses are saying, we really, really want staff and we're short staffed. And on the other hand, the government has started, I think, UBI for populations that would normally be going for those types of jobs. And so something like that, how would you, looking at that kind of data, how would you interpret that?
oh, companies need to pay more money.
Right.
Right? If you are not factoring the fact that someone can actually make more money staying
Mm-hmm.
at home
Mm-hmm.
than going in and working for you and your organization,
Right.
and it's basic economics.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is home, they can invest in themselves, they can invest and their children. They don't have the added expenses of going to and from work. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have the expense of childcare. You just don't have all of that. So again, companies have to now adjust. They have to pivot.
Right.
And so they understand that if you want someone to go into your organization and work, all right, are you supplying masks? Are you supplying? We're in a new age, and so there's sort of two sides to every story. And again, looking at the data,
Mm-hmm.
the data would suggest raise your wages.
Mm-hmm. But doesn't that then strengthen big businesses? Because obviously, a small business operator will never be able to afford paying the wages of somebody who's a big business. Doesn't that really make Amazon even more strong?
Again, it's you have to make the hard decisions. So if the decision is to go into business, you can't stay in business at the expense of your employees being insolvent.
Mm, yeah,
You see?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's either you can afford to keep your business open, or your employees have to choose between healthcare and food.
Right.
You
But
see,
isn't that where, for example, government should step in? Either
stepped in already because they reduced their taxes.
they reduce their taxes
They
for,
reduced the
you mean
taxes.
for the businesses,
Yeah,
for
in
the big
general, that's
businesses.
stepping in. Yes, right.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If Amazon, for example, was taxed higher,
Yeah.
that way, an individual can decide, I don't fancy working for Amazon. It doesn't skill me any better. If government was going to supplement my wages, because I mean, like we say, AI and tech has disrupted our way of work and life, then that kind of gives individuals the power to choose to work for a small business.
When I say public-private partnerships, it is for larger businesses to support smaller businesses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Government technically subsidizing larger corporations, right? So we don't pay our employees a living wage. So now they have to get their government, get Medicaid from the government, get, food stamps from the government, et cetera. No, everyone has to pay their fair share. And whether your taxes are now, whether investments that you have instead of paying taxes are now going to help small businesses,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of subsidies, in terms of contracts, in terms of like small businesses and larger corporations can be lifelines to small business owners. But again, we have to rethink business. We have to rethink the interconnectivity of our economies.
Right.
That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the government, the government, the government.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of Amazon opening up salons, Amazon can create small business grants for salon owners.
Right. Right.
They can support that,
Mm-hmm.
not just sort of try to remove them
Mm-hmm.
and now turn an actual business owner and their employees all into the Amazon consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can sort of share the the benefits of a robust economy.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we need candidates of the future. We
Mm-hmm.
need we need candidates that understand that we want to now start holding large businesses and accountable in the way that now makes them also responsible for the vitality of smaller businesses
Right.
that their business operations could possibly displace. And you don't know that they're displacing these businesses until they occur. And at that point, it's too late. So that's why I said we need to be intentional about our research.
Right. Yeah. One way I think our chancellor here, Rishi Sunak, has addressed some of the issues was to, for example, pay small companies to train young people.
Yes.
So you take them on, and the government gives them a living wage to train with you, and they're employed by you, and that kind of really keeps, um, you know, people in employment longer, gives young people the confidence to know that actually they can learn skills. So if you didn't agree with your own party's policies, would you feel comfortable to, diverge? Mm-hmm.
So we've created our own political party. It's centered around building a New York City that works for everyone. The Empowerment Party,
Mm-hmm.
government that works for the people. And again, with my background in business, I understand that, we need to balance our budget, but we don't balance our budget on the backs of the most vulnerable. And we also don't balance our budget on the backs of your business community. They're vital to the vitality of our city. So, again, that's where, my professional background comes in to play, because I'm able to, again, utilize all of these different experiences and knowledge to sort of look at, once I get the data and analyze it in a way that, again, ensures that, our decision helps as many as possible. Our notion in terms of building a New York City that works for everyone is the focus of that. That's our core focus of that, regardless of where you've come from. We want to ensure that we improve your quality of life. We want to ensure that we live up to the promise of New York City, a New York City that works for everyone instead of just a select few.
Mm-hmm. And so you're wanting to really cross all demographics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what you need
as possible. Mm-hmm. And so, the youth is important. And, I think they understand, a lot of them understand that, this is their future, right? What happens in the next 8 years is going to anyone that's coming out of high school, anyone that's coming out of college. New York City can either go in the right direction, or it can, we can have a very different city 4 to 8 years from now if we don't elect the right individuals that understand that, right? You need to be the candidate for this moment.
Right.
Which means that data needs to inform your decision making, not political ideology, right? Mm-hmm. Data that's based on the your number one goal, and that's economic addressing economic inequality, ensuring that our students are educated to their fullest potential so they can compete in a 21st century economy, right? Worldwide. New York City students are now competing with students in London, students from different countries. It's our economies are interconnected.
Yeah.
So we have to ensure that they are ready.
Right.
And if we don't, they'll be left behind.
If you were successful during your term as mayor, what do you think you will have achieved that will have really made New York thriving once again?
Yeah, so being the candidate of the future, and what that means in 4 years, our graduation rates increase. We have our schools that receive the resources that we need, reducing crime, reducing the homeless population. And when I say that, I mean measurably doing so. Meaning, you know, if I came in office and there were 200,000 people in the homeless and that was, you know, considered to be a part of the homeless population, I'm going to tangibly reduce that by 100,000. So you can see this sort of improvements that have been made as a result of the policies that we put in place.
Right. Well, it was a real pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to following your campaign and wish you all the best. Hopefully, you'll be the next mayor of New York, and you know I'll be posting and celebrating.